The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. You noticed it was Jesus who looked on the crowds, and he had compassion as if they were sheep without a shepherd. What we're focusing on today, is simply striving to allow the crowds of this world to know the shepherd. We're striving to reach the lost, and the harvest is plentiful. And that represents Mission Sunday. It represents our focus. If you'll turn with me to Acts chapter 14 and verse 24, I wanted to kind of use this to just gauge the format for this lesson. It's a little different than what we usually focus on. I remember during COVID, I guess at its peak or wherever it was, we weren't able to have our missionaries come throughout the year. And it was a very challenging situation because they needed the encouragement from us. We needed the encouragement from them. We needed to know about the sheep that were hearing about their shepherd. And in fact, it's a biblical concept. In verse 24 of Acts 14, it says, "And they passed through Pisidia and came to Pamphylia. And when they had spoken the word in Perga, they went down to Italia. And from there they sailed to Antioch, where they had been commended to the grace of God for the work that they had fulfilled. And when they arrived and gathered the church together, they declared all that God had done with them and how he had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles." So this opening of a door of faith to the Gentiles, it would have caused a rejoicing. It would have caused people to realize they sent them out for a purpose. They returned. That purpose was fulfilled. What a great blessing to hear about those crowds that Jesus had compassion on, who learned about their shepherd, and they were no longer sheep outside of the fold. And so that's really sums up our Mission Sunday. And so if you'll recall, because our missionaries couldn't come, I said, well, I'll represent them on their behalf, and I'll just kind of give a little snippet about what they do. And so from then on, we've kind of done that in lieu of the video, and really helps us as we're understanding Mission Sunday. Every penny, as has already been said, that is given today is going toward our mission effort. So the faces that we see on the screen, this collage that's there, they represent families that have made a sacrifice to leave their homes and to go into a foreign field to strive to bring the gospel to the lost, to strive to go and find those sheep outside of the fold, and they've gone further away from their families, and that is a great challenge, and one we've learned personally over the years, and it's something that I do not take for granted. That, you know, it was funny, JCA had their Grandparents' Day, and it was interesting, you know, we came, and there were some people like, why are y'all at Grandparents' Day? I was like, don't you see some of this gray that's here? And I said, no, my boys' grandparents are in Kentucky and Arkansas, so I said, we're going to represent them with the video camera and send it on to them. But I thought about it. I said, well, you know what? I always had a set of grandparents 10,000 miles away when I was a kid. And so when we think about it, it's quality rather than quantity when we're able to be together. But I don't take for granted what our missionaries are doing in striving to reach the lost. We need to keep that in mind. And so just to give you an ethos, a thinking behind why we're doing this, I wanted to fulfill Acts 14, 26 and 27 on their behalf. But before we get into our mission works, I want you to think about the fact that we have Mission Sunday. That's been something that has been done for years. But this year we've got our mission quarter. And so we've already been focusing on missions, especially on Wednesday nights. We've been able to have our missionaries to come and to speak to us, whether it's in person, and we have a few that are going to be able to come in person. 2 more are coming. Or whether it was via video, whether it was via a Zoom, we've been able to hear from our missionaries utilizing the technology that we have. And so I've been thankful for that. If you were not able to see some of those, I want to encourage you to go back and watch them on our YouTube page. You will be blessed for it. But it helps us see what is being done, helps us fulfill this passage. Generally, what we do is we try to have 2 sermons before Mission Sunday that are focused on missions. And the first of those two was, this is the first year we actually had a missionary in a field in the Philippines. Michael Stock came and he presented a lesson concerning the fields that are ripe with harvest and how much the need is in the Philippines. And in every travesty that took place while they've been there, whether it was typhoon, whether it was earthquake, whether it was COVID, they were able to step in. And in fact, it was a typhoon and it was the earthquake that prepared them for action when COVID took place. When everybody else was shutting their doors, they didn't, and souls were won for the gospel's sake. And I was so encouraged to hear about that work. And we are still looking into that work and seeing what we can do, but largely what comes from today dictates whether we can take on that work or not. And in fact, we've got two other works that as the missions committee, we've been looking at. There's one that's a church plant in New Mexico, and looks very promising. There is another work that is a teacher for the Jamaican School of Preaching, and possibly supporting him. And so there are three possible works that are not listed or represented on this collage, but maybe next year they will. Amen? That's our focus for Mission Sunday today. And so I want to keep that in mind. I think the best place to start is Belize, because this is, I think it was mentioned in our class, this is the first year we've had Mission Sunday and a campaign group on the same Sunday that is away. And I may be wrong. You can clarify that later. But to have a mission group that is in Belize as we speak while we're talking about Mission Sunday is extremely encouraging, because this is a congregation that takes the gospel as well as sends the gospel, sends the light. And so I'm very thankful for all that's done. In fact, Gary Cosby brought a great message a few weeks ago on a Wednesday night, and he gave the history for what we do. And if you think about it, over 53 years, there's been a lot of changes to the work in Belize. It's not just that we've been in Belize. We have either supported full-time mission works. We have taken campaigns for 50 years plus. We have also started something recently where we are inviting the missionaries, the preachers, the indigenous peoples all over Belize to Belize City. And in fact, it was Jeffrey that was able to put together a seminar for them, a training seminar on teaching, on preaching, on elderships, on things that are vital for equipping the saints for the work of ministry. I am thankful that that has become the focus, because we're seeing fruit from it. We're seeing growth already. And so just because we've been in Belize for 53 years, I think sometimes we can think, well, we're just doing what we've always done. That's not the case. And I'm very thankful. And Jeffrey has spent a lot of time for months getting ready. He's preaching for the gospel meeting there as we speak. And so thankful for the work that's being done there. I wanted to ask you, can I get a show of hands if you have been to Belize? If you will, if you've been to Belize. Thank you for showing your hands. Can I get a show of hands if you've helped send someone to Belize? All right, everybody's hand can go up on that because of Mission Sunday. But it's something that's important that our hands, we're told whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Well, what our hand finds today is being able to send the light into the world. And, having our hands personally involved in the work is vital. And you've all been the hands and the feet of Jesus. And when I think about coming from our own number, from our own flock, if you will, we have individuals that are the next two that I want us to focus on. Joshua Dykes going to Romania. He's one of our own. And he's come through this youth program, and he has, if you will, turn to 2 Corinthians 5:16, as I mentioned, he has grown every summer as we were. He was a youth intern with JJ, then he became a preacher intern with me, and then it morphed into missionary intern for 2 summers. Every summer he grew and he grew and he grew, and he's continued to do so, and he is such a great example to me, and I am so thankful for his focus. I'm going to hold it together here. But 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 16 was, if you'll recall, when Michael presented a few weeks ago when Josh, his video was presented. While he's been in Michigan at Shorts Creek, they're preparing him to go into Romania next year in 2024. Michael mentioned this passage. I want to read it. He said that this was a passage that a younger Joshua Dykes was listening to, and it changed his life. Verse 16, "From now on, therefore, we regard no one according to the flesh. Even though we once regarded Christ according to the flesh, we regard him thus no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation." So through Christ we found renewal, but through Christ we have a ministry so that others find renewal as well. Reconciliation. Verse 19, "That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespass against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ." Yes, Aaron? Oh, he's flying to Denmark today. Okay, I didn't realize he's going to. Okay, well, we'd be praying for Josh flying to Denmark today in pursuit of the work. And so very thankful for what he is doing. Aaron, thank you for letting me know. So therefore, he says, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. So why is Josh going to Denmark? So that people will be reconciled to God. And what was interesting, this was a focus of a lesson at Camp Maywood. And Josh, a camper sitting there, listened to this passage, and he said, I want to take up the torch. He said he wanted to be an ambassador for Christ to bring the message of reconciliation. And it's interesting, and Michael pointed out that Josh is introverted. And I think sometimes we think that extroverted is what needs to be done because you need to reach out, therefore you need to be outgoing. Well, that's a misnomer. It really isn't the case. Case in point, my grandfather, my namesake, Richard Harp Sr., he preached for 66 years until he had his stroke, and he was able to preach a few weeks ago for the first time since the stroke. He is still working. He is still serving. But he is one of the quietest men I've ever met. He's an introvert. But he left Haleville, and he's been a preacher since he was 17 years old. They left the States, went to New Zealand, planted a work there. My mother was having a new Christian study with my grandmother when my dad met her. They were married 10 months later. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for an introvert being willing to take the gospel, I would not exist. So when we stop and we think about the impact that someone can make for the gospel, what's powerful is God's word is what's heard, not the eloquence, not the outgoing. And Joshua is an incredible example for all of us. May we never discredit that in any way. But I wanted you to think about this. And Josh has mentioned that he spent the last year, and he's going to spend another year at Shorts Creek, and he's getting ready to come here. But then eventually he'll be going to Romania. He has been working with a congregation where the preacher and one of the elders it was a missionary in Romania. So they've been preparing him for the culture. They've been preparing him to learn the language. Something he's working on this year is trying to speak a full conversation for 5 minutes without any prompts, without any help. And so he's working on learning a new language. And Romanian is very challenging. So is English. But But what's powerful about what Josh is doing, he's been wanting to go to Iași, Romania. If you'll recall, that it was on the eastern border, and it is, if you'll notice, there's a sliver between Romania and Ukraine. That sliver is Moldova, a country. And so one part of this is it's very challenging because most of the congregations are on the western border that borders Hungary. And so Josh would be very far away from all the other congregations striving to start and plan a work. That's hard. That is hard. When we were in Scotland, we were far away from other missionaries, and it was a challenging situation. So I'm thankful to hear that they have he went to Yosh. They did a gospel meeting, and there was a great response, but it was also a great survey trip for him. They have found that they really need to change their focus. He's going to go to the western part into Arad and Oradia, and he's going to be closer to other missionaries as he's getting his feet wet, as he's learning the culture, the language, and that he'll be encouraged. And I'm thankful for that. I told him I'm thankful for his fluidity, that his willingness to look at what needs to be done and still take the gospel. So we need to continue to pray for him, but also, he didn't mention this, I'm thankful he's on the Hungarian border, not the Ukrainian border, for many reasons. And we need to continue to pray for Ukraine and Russia, and that does not spread into Romania, Moldova, and other places. And so we need to continue to pray for his work. Our next hands that have been in the work, that have grown up, literally, many of you held their hands as they were toddling down these corridors. But Alex Coggins is one of them at Jefferson Christian Academy. He's in his third year as the Bible teacher to Jefferson Christian Academy. And for every mission field, it needs a missionary, and Jefferson Christian Academy is a mission field. And I'm so thankful that Alex saw this, and he was willing to really jump in 2020 during the hardest time to be a teacher I can imagine in living memory. And he jumped in, and he's doing a fantastic job. And so I wanted to make sure we mention, the elders have taken him from the mission budget. So what's being done today is not affecting him. He is on salary for us. He's one of our ministers, but his role is at JCA. And so, but that does not mean he's no longer a missionary. It does not mean that JCA is no longer a mission field. So we need to continue to recognize what he's doing is vital for bringing the gospel to the children that are in our back door. Matthew 19 and verse 13, if you'll turn there with me. Matthew 19:13 says, "Then children were brought to him that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people, but Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven.' And he laid his hands on them and went away." Jesus used his hands to reach out to children. And I'm so thankful that young men that were children among us are now reaching out with the hands of Jesus, with the feet of Jesus. So the work of our next missionary is helping all people to give answers to difficult questions. We are living more in a society that has become more cynical concerning the existence of God, concerning Christianity, period. And so what AP, Apologetics Press, and Kyle Butt and Eric Lyons are doing is vital, and they've created a resource over decades to try to help us have an answer, to be ready to give an answer. If you'll turn to 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 14, you might find this picture to be a little peculiar. As we were sitting there when Kyle met with us, it was through an iPad that's sitting here on the podium, and it was obviously on these screens, but this is what I saw, and I chuckled by it. But what a blessing that he was able to be in this pulpit via Zoom. But he shared some things that what they're working on is the information they have and videos that they're producing. They're trying to make some of the 3 and 4 minute videos so that they can answer things quickly and get more traction. And in fact, their views are going up and up and up because of this. And there's been teachers in public schools that have been able to use their material to teach about the existence of God, about creation in a public school. And he mentioned about, if you go back and watch, if you weren't able to hear, he mentioned about that there are students that are attending the local Church of Christ because of the material that AP is bringing. He talked about the AP, Apologetics Press Study Bible, that the majority of the material that's on the Apologetics Press website is in the margins of their study Bible. And it's actually been translated into Telugu. The majority of those in India speak that language. There are hundreds of languages within India, but that is the number one. And the fact that it's been translated into Telugu is a wonderful thing. And so that means it can only get more and more information out to other countries that are speaking these different languages. They question God in different languages, and they need to hear the truth in their own native tongue. In 1 Peter 3, in verse 14, it says, "But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is within you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect." The way we can do it with gentleness and respect is being prepared to give an answer for the reason of the hope that's within us. And what AP is doing and what Kyle has been doing has truly been helping us to be ready to give that answer. I want to also mention he has a debate with a prominent atheist on October 25th, and they're using the Faulkner campus to do this. And so I want to encourage you, as he encouraged you, pray for that effort. And he needs our support and he needs our prayers. So the fact that it's a resource that we are getting behind, not just Kyle, it also reminds me of Eddie Clower and his work. Eddie Clower with Truth for Today and with the throughthescriptures.com, they have resources that they are providing for the world in a profound way. And we're very familiar with Eddie Clower, but I want to just mention it's an organization that works solely on getting Bible study material into the hands of Christians all over the world in as many languages as possible. So out of their, all of their commentaries, I believe, are translated into Telugu. So keep that in mind that AP just did that with theirs. Everything in their material is in Telugu and 22 other languages, in 23 different languages, covering nearly all the books of the Bible. And he mentioned about this idea of trying to get the gospel into all the world. You can say that. That's pretty easy to say. How do you do it? How do you go about doing it? Well, they have figured out a 3-step process of being able to do this. They have a monthly mail out that they send. And when I say a mail out, what they're sending are those red Truth for Today commentaries? They're sending that material in smaller booklets that they can ship to 32,000 missionaries. Keep that in mind every month. That costs money. And we're trying to support him. That's what this looks like. This is one of their missionaries holding, notice how he is clutching these materials they desperately need and scour. The second step is covering the earth with the knowledge of Jesus Christ in the Life of Christ studies. And you'll notice these, many of you have these. We're going through these in our Bible study this year, the Life of Christ. And so they're trying to get this into the hands of as many people as they can in other countries to do the same as we're doing, but in different languages. So the third step is they have an online learning center, and it features 366 courses that cover the Bible, at least 93% of it, in those 23 different languages. It's incredible what they're doing. We need to get behind them. Joey and Tammy Treat, their family is growing. This is a picture of their daughter just getting married. And so Joey and Tammy, their work has been in Guam, Palau, and Chuuk in Micronesia. And it's been a challenge for them. And just want to let you know, they are going to be with us. So he will be reporting in person, but I'm just going to give a snippet of what's been going on. If you recall, before COVID, they moved to Guam, which is a U.S. province. They would go from Guam to Chuuk and Palau, so they had to island hop with a plane. It's expensive, but it made it impossible when COVID came, because think about a little island. They can get rid of COVID by not letting anybody in. Well, the problem was they couldn't get in, and he's not been able to do any of the work in Palau and Chuuk, and they've even made the decision that no foreigners allowed in to Chuuk and Palau right now. And so it's made it, indefinitely they can't do the work. So they're seeing a door closed to that work. Well, he fell sick in Guam, and he was not able to do the work that he was doing at one point. And there was a young preacher that started doing the work. He started preaching for them, and he was doing such a great job. When he came back to try to fill in, and he found that he was taking away from an indigenous man. So he kind of said, well, that's pulled me away from what our purpose is. And so they've seen that it's time to come home. And so they're working on transitioning back to the States. And so he'll fill us in on more of that, and that's what I've come to understand. And he'll explain that plan in detail. But as far as the Pacific is concerned, the Fergusons are just starting their work. And so as you see, you've got Joey and Tammy are coming away from the islands. You have the Fergusons since 2021 are picking up that mantle, and they are keeping it going. And Wednesday, Nathaniel brought a 30-minute presentation, and I wanted it to be an hour because he had so much to bring, and it was profound. It was encouraging. He has an infectious way about him that is just exciting. And it's powerful to hear what is being done. Their trek up a volcano to try to get the gospel to the lost was, you need to hear it if you didn't get to hear what he did. But they've been working, like I said, in the islands with the Pacific Island Bible College, the PIBC, since 2021. And this work has been going on for over 25 years. And so what's wonderful is this is someone who's going to be able to breathe life into this, to carry on the mantle for those who are getting older, who have been doing this for so long. So the work that the Fergusons are doing, that Nathan and Rachel are doing, is extremely vital for the gospel in the Pacific. There are 22 island nations that he is responsible for. 22. And not every island has just one congregation. They have many. And so he goes to different congregations within those islands of 22, representing 15 different countries. And so what they're doing is very important for getting the gospel to the lost. So he kind of does what Eddie Clower does with Truth for Today. With the PIBC, they have material that is online, and it's actually able to reach beyond the Pacific. But they're striving to equip the indigenous people for the work of ministry. And what they're doing is taking these courses, these Bible college courses. They're 2 hours a night, 3 weeks long, and he's taking them to these congregations, sometimes walking through the mud up a volcano. I cannot even make that up. And he's getting the gospel there so that these people are able to hear the gospel and grow where they are. All right, so their work is vital, and I'm excited that we are supporting them, that we're getting behind them, that we have a young couple who has seen the need and a way to fill it. The next is Graham and Elizabeth McDonald. They have always been able to see the youth and see how they can fill the need. They saw a 12-year-old younger version of, less hairier version of myself, and invited me to come to Scotland, and that's why I went into ministry to begin with. And so I've had a lot of personal love and admiration for this precious family and for this precious work that I'm so thankful we're involved with. I apologize for moving so quickly, but there's a lot to cover. Graham, he had invited me when I was a sophomore at Freed to be a preacher intern with them. And I was able to raise the support and live with him for the summer. And I was his guinea pig because I was the first preacher intern with him. And so he was learning along the way. Well, I was able to tell Josh this week, I'm glad he put up with me, because he was my guinea pig for 3 summers as a preacher and a missionary intern. If it wasn't for what Graham did with me, I couldn't have done that with Josh. So it's incredible what people are willing to do in striving to reach the younger generations, and I don't know where I'd be without this family. They're continuing to do that. In fact, this summer they have another intern, and their need has changed because of the work where they have a lot of young men that are involved and that are leaders, and that's a blessing to have. But they have a lot of young ladies who are in the youth program, and they don't have as many they don't have as many women as the chaperones to help. So they have a youth intern that's coming to work with the girls this summer, and her name is Macy Richardson, and she's actually the preacher's daughter for where Tanya and David Hayes have placed membership in Petersville and Florence, and I went to school with Adam as well, but her father. But we are supporting Macy in sending her to work with them, and so she's going to be teaching the young ladies. She's going to be a counselor for their Camp Heather Bell, and so thankful that they're continuing to influence the life of young people and their youth program as well. So the ninth and final focus is the Taylors in Japan, and they're going to be with us. I believe it's next week, and so I'm looking forward. They're going to be physically with us. I'm looking forward to that. And again, I went to school with the Taylors. Just happened to go to school with Leslie and Sarah, but their contact was through Yoshi Sugita. What's interesting is Leslie, whole time I've known him, only speaks English, but he left Freed and went to Japan, and he has learned the language completely. He and Sarah both, so fluently that he is the preacher for the Matsudo Church of Christ in Japan, right outside of Tokyo. That is a feat in and of itself, that he's able to do that, being an English speaker, but a second language speaking Japanese and reaching the lost. If you will, turn to Acts chapter 18 and verse 24. This passage is one that's very near and dear to them, and it kind of gives a method to what they're doing. It says, "Now a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was an eloquent man, competent in the Scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he spoke and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, but when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they took him and explained to him the way of God more accurately." And so what's interesting is Aquila and Priscilla are a husband and wife team that they were able to take Apollos aside and explain the way more clearly. What's powerful is Sarah and Leslie Taylor are a husband and wife team that are able to do similar to what they've done. So what he explains is Japan is a very go society, and the men work very long hours. And so it's very hard for Leslie to get to know other men in the area. And so what Sarah is able to do is with their children, through their tennis club and other school events, she reaches out to their mothers and wives and starts Bible studies with them. And that's how they meet. That's how Leslie meets the husband. And he's taken up a tennis racket, and he's now playing tennis. And we used to play racquetball together, and I think maybe I helped him just a little bit. I don't know. He's probably had to completely learn. It's a different game. But he's using what he has to try to reach the lost, and I'm so proud of the work that they are doing. And it reminds me to go back to Matthew chapter 9 and verse 37. "Then he said to his disciples, 'The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few.'" The laborers are few. This is just 9 families that we've mentioned, 9 different works that are in this collage behind me. The laborers are few. "Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord." Pray for Josh as he's going to Denmark today. "Pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." What we're doing for Mission Sunday is we're sending these 9 families into this harvest, and we're helping them stay in the mission field. I remember living solely on support from individuals, from churches. We had 10 different churches supporting us. My dad had 40 different churches supporting him in New Zealand. And I remember he said he would lose churches each week. I remember my grandfather losing support because a porch had to be built on the back of a building. I remember hearing these things as a kid and just think, if you're going to lose support over things that have to be done, that's a challenging situation. May we take the pressure off of their shoulders in what we're striving to do in sending them, so that we can explain that they get to stay another year in the mission field. Isaiah 55, 6 through 7 gives us the reason why it's important that these laborers who have the compassion of Jesus who see that these crowds are like sheep without a shepherd, and they simply need a shepherd to be there. They need to see the Christ. These individuals are willing to go. We need to be willing to send them. And that's as simple as that. Seek the Lord while he may be found. You see, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. You know, when the harvest is there, there's a window when it's time to bring in the harvest. If the harvest is left out, then the harvest will rot. The harvest will die. And so time is of the essence, that while we have the opportunity to take the gospel, to live as Christ, and to die as gain, may we strive to reach one more soul for the cause of Christ. Either it's taking the gospel to Belize, taking the gospel to Publix down the street, taking the gospel or sending the gospel today. We have a responsibility, we have an opportunity to seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he's near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. This morning, when I think about this concept of Mission Sunday and our opportunity to send the gospel, you know, you can't help someone unless you first help yourself. You know, maybe, Josh, while he's on that plane, they're going to say if the cabin pressure changes and you have to have that oxygen mask, as a parent, you don't put that on yourself first. As a parent, you're supposed to put that on yourself first, then help your child. It seems like that is something that is counterintuitive. We want to help our children first. But if you run out of oxygen, you're not going to be able to help anybody. When it comes to reaching the lost, we need to strive to reach ourselves first. And maybe you're here this morning and you've not been seeking the Lord while he may be found. You've not called upon him while he is near. And if you'll recall, Ananias said to Paul, "Why do you wait? Arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord." Can we assist you in any way? Can we encourage you? Maybe you are a child of God, but your way has gotten in the way. And you've not looked to the way of the Lord. Can we encourage you to come back? Please respond if you will, while together we stand and while we sing.